From the very first second she stepped into the war room, the air changed. It wasn't the kind of shift people noticed with their eyes, it was the kind they felt, quiet, heavy, unsettling. The rest of the officers kept their focus on the large operations table glowing with mapping screens and blinking alerts, but something about the young woman entering behind the senior intelligence official made even the buzzing lights seem to pause. No one expected her. No one recognized her. And no one imagined that within the next few minutes, every admiral in that steel-fortified room would be standing at attention, saluting a woman they had laughed at just seconds earlier. What they didn't know was that she carried a history heavier than medals, heavier than scars, heavier even than war itself. Her name was Arwa Nasir, though almost no one in that room had ever heard it spoken aloud. She wasn't tall, she wasn't loud, and she didn't walk with the crisp precision of trained officers. Her steps were soft, almost hesitant, like someone who didn't belong here, but there was something in her eyes, an exhaustion mixed with determination, that didn't match her delicate frame. She looked like someone who had lived through more than she was ready to admit. The thick war room door slammed shut behind her as she took her place at the edge of the table, trying hard to stay invisible, unaware that this day was about to rewrite the silent chapters of her life. At the center of the room stood General Harris, the man known for his storm-like temper and merciless discipline. He glanced at Arwa only for a second, then smirked in front of the officers. It was the kind of smirk powerful men often wear when they see someone who, in their eyes, doesn't belong in their world. His voice boomed across the room as he said, half joking, half mocking, "Well then, soldier, what's your rank?" The room chuckled lightly. A few officers exchanged amused looks. She looked too young, too fragile, too quiet. Surely she had to be a clerk, an assistant, maybe even a civilian brought for documentation. But no one expected what would follow. Not even her. Arwa froze. Memories she had buried deep clawed their way back, memories of the desert operations, the rescue missions gone wrong, the screams of comrades, the taste of dust and blood, and the day she walked away from her uniform to care for a family that never recovered from losing her brother to the same war she once fought. She had been gone for 2 years, forgotten by those who never really knew her, remembered only in encrypted files locked behind clearance levels these officers had never touched. She didn't answer at first. Her silence irritated the general, who stepped forward with folded arms, ready to let loose another jab. But before he could speak, the intelligence official who brought her here moved closer and whispered something into his ear. Something short. Something quick. Something that drained the color from the general's face. The war room fell quiet as General Harris straightened suddenly, his expression shifting from mockery to something tense, something calculating. He turned to the officers and ordered them to open a classified personnel file. The screens flickered, the secure system scanned her identity, and within seconds, the room fell into a stunned stillness that felt colder than winter air. Every admiral in the room leaned forward, eyes widening slowly as the information loaded: decorated combat specialist, former field commander, highest valor honor recipient, strategic genius behind 3 successful hostage recovery missions, the one soldier whose team had once been outnumbered 40-1 and survived. They were reading the service record of a legend, one that had been classified after she voluntarily disappeared from military life. And she had been standing there like a ghost returned from a forgotten battlefield. The admirals remained silent, unable to reconcile the quiet woman in front of them with the warrior in the files. Then, without a single command given, the highest-ranking admiral stepped forward, heels clicking sharply against the metal floor, and saluted her, a slow, deliberate salute that shook the room. One by one, every admiral followed. The echo of their boots and raised hands was louder than any roar of applause, heavier than any burst of pride. And Arwa, who had lived years being unseen, unheard, unrecognized, stood in the center of a storm of respect she never asked for but undoubtedly earned. Her hands trembled. She didn't know whether to smile, cry, or walk away. She did none of those. She simply bowed her head. But the story didn't begin here. To understand the weight of that moment, one must go back to the battlefield where Arwa's voice first broke. She wasn't supposed to be a soldier. She was a girl who grew up on stories of courage told by a father who believed bravery was the most honorable form of living. She watched her older brother, Adil, tie his boots every morning with a smile that hid the fear no soldier was allowed to show in front of loved ones. She was the kind of person who tried to heal the world quietly, until the day the world took away the person she loved most. Adil's death shattered her, but it also built her. She enlisted with a fire that frightened even the trainers, pushing herself harder than anyone else, driven by grief, vengeance, and purpose all at once. Her rise in the army was fast, too fast for some. She wasn't the strongest, but she was the smartest. She wasn't the loudest, but she was the most strategic. When her first mission went wrong, ambushed, cornered, and stranded for 19 hours, she didn't freeze. She adapted. While everyone else panicked, she crafted a survival plan that saved dozens of lives. That was when commanders realized she wasn't ordinary, she was a force carved out of pain and discipline. But greatness often demands a price. She saw more death than life. She gave more than she received. Her heart grew quieter, heavier, until one day she returned from a mission and found her mother sitting on the floor of their home, holding Adil's old uniform, crying for the son she lost and the daughter she feared losing next. That night, without telling anyone, Arwa resigned. She disappeared from military life with nothing but a small backpack and the ghosts she carried. For 2 years she avoided anything that reminded her of war. She worked in small research centers, then in humanitarian aid, trying to rebuild lives far away from the battlefield. She tried to rebuild her own heart too, but some wounds don't heal with time, they heal when someone reminds you who you truly are. Her return came unexpectedly when the intelligence unit traced a threat linked to someone she once saved. They needed her, not as a soldier, but as the only mind capable of decoding the enemy's strategies. She said no at first. She didn't want to return to the world that swallowed everything she loved. But when they showed her the consequences of staying silent, innocent lives at stake, she packed her bag again. Now, standing in the war room with the weight of her past on her shoulders, Arwa felt that old ache in her chest. She didn't want honor. She didn't want applause. She only wanted to save the people whose hope depended on her strength. The mission briefing began, and Arwa slowly raised her eyes to the holographic map. She analyzed the enemy's patterns, the terrain, the escape routes. She pointed out hidden dangers the generals hadn't noticed. Within minutes, the room realized that her mind was sharper than any weapon they had. As the operation unfolded in real time, the officers watched with a mixture of fear and awe. Every decision she made saved lives. Every strategy she suggested closed in on the enemy. When the final extraction succeeded and the last hostage was safely retrieved, the entire room exhaled. It felt like the world itself had been holding its breath. But when the applause faded, Arwa didn't feel triumphant. She felt peaceful. She had not returned for power, she had returned for humanity. And for the first time in years, she felt her brother's spirit beside her, not in pain, but in pride. When she walked out of the war room that night, there was no trumpet, no ceremony, no recognition beyond the salute she received. But she didn't need any of it. For the first time in a long time, she walked with a steady heart, knowing she had honored the sacrifice that shaped her. And somewhere deep inside, the world knew that Arwa Nasir, the woman who walked silently among warriors, was one of the greatest soldiers they had ever seen. If this story touched your heart, please support the video with your love so more people can feel its message. Special request, before the story ends, please share in the comments what part inspired you the most. Your words keep these stories alive.